Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. I've been looking at all the new stuff that's been dropping. One of the things that's interesting that dropped a couple days ago is the Smith & Wesson FPC. Now, if you don't know what the FPC is, it's Smith & Wesson's answer to the Kel-Tec Sub-2000. It is a PCC, it is a pistol caliber carbine that folds. And why did they do this? There's been more people that have had more interest in survival type rifles or get home type rifles or pistols. The idea is you're away from your home at work somewhere else and something bad happens and you have to get home, but you need a weapon, and that makes a lot of sense. But it's always couched in that idea that there is an EMP or something tragic, even more tragic than, like a fire or an accident or something like that. And I live in the world of reality, sort of. If an EMP hits, having talked to enough people that actually work on the electrical grid, there's not much we're going to be able to do about it from that perspective. You need to be prepped and set up to where you have enough food, water, and this could take months or years to get past, because what you're actually worried about is more so the grid's going to collapse because the transformers can't handle EMPs because they have not been hardened. But let's get back to the survival rifles. First, I gotta say that they're all hideous. The practicality of these things, though, makes me look a little past that. Now, of the two, I would probably still choose the Sub-2000 because it takes Glock magazines, and that would be a requirement for me if I was going to stick to something like this. Me personally, my PCC, and it's not even a full PCC, it's just a pistol caliber, is an AP5. And I like it because it's an MP5. I've talked about my MP5 love before, but there was some secret sauce I hadn't noticed. The longer barrel in the AP5 makes this more attractive to me because it makes it definitely more accurate and definitely keeps targets inside of 200 yards, up to 200 yards in range, and very capable of engaging. So I see the secret sauce here. My problem with it has always been the optics, and that's where the FPC, Smith & Wesson's FPC, comes in. Now, what's cool about it is it folds instead of end over end, it folds to the side. And it looks like the FPC is about 1,000 times more accurate. No offense, Kel-Tec, but Mr. Guns and Gear did a grouping with it, and if he hadn't pulled one shot, he would have been close to 3/4 of, not even 3/4, a half-inch group with it. Now, his second group opened up a little bit more, but it was still very tight with, normal ammunition. So this means that they're very accurate. That means you'd be able to definitely engage those targets up to 200 yards. I can't get past the look of the damn things. They're ugly as hell, despite the practicality. Give you more on the FPC. What's cool about it is it allows you to use M&P mags, so it makes sense from a Smith & Wesson perspective if you have an M&P already. The largest magazine I've seen for a Smith & Wesson M&P has been 20 rounds or 23 rounds or something like that, where a Glock mag you can get a standard 30-round capacity or 33-round magazine, which draws me a little bit more towards that. Truth of the matter is, I like these transformer gun type things that are coming out, and I always have. If I was going to buy one right now, it wouldn't be either one of those two, though. The gun that I wanted back in the day, that Pop told me no because it had no real practical form or function in his mind, was, and still exists in a modern incarnation, is the Henry AR-7 22 survival rifle that originally was done. If you don't know the history of the AR-7, it was originally designed as an Air Force survival rifle so that you could kill game, maybe defend yourself if you needed to. The gun collapses to where it all fits into its buttstock, including a couple magazines that can be loaded. And that makes a lot of sense. I know a lot of outfitters in Alaska had used them as a survival rifle just in case they had to land in the middle of nowhere because they ran out of fuel or they crashed or anything like that to provide food for themselves. Now, this little AR-7 also floats and does all this cool stuff. That's what excited me, was the small footprint of that. That's why Magpul, when they released their new, I call it the triple changer gun, is just an overlay for a Glock pistol. But you still have to SBR it, so if you want to make it legal and to actually use, you have to SBR it. But that would give you a Glock carbine, pistol caliber carbine. I was trying to struggle for the word because it's not actually a longer barrel in that iteration. But it makes sense because I'm a Glock guy. And not because it's perfect, it's because I have them now. Truth be told, I would really consider a new SIG, a SIG P320, or I would consider an M&P, a Smith & Wesson M&P, if I wasn't married to the Glocks, because I have a Glock 26 and a Glock 20 and a Glock 19 already, and I have magazines, even the larger capacity magazine. Well, I gave those away because they don't match what I was looking for. I was originally going to build an AR-15 PCC, pistol caliber 9mm AR-15, after my buddy Dexton had built one, because I had seen the practicality of it. My love affair with the MP5, though, trumped that, so I didn't build one. That said, I now have enough magazines for my AP5, and I have always had enough magazines for my Glock 19. Those are the two guns I would marry up, even though they don't have the same magazine capacity. To me, it would be more so having one ammunition store that I could feed both of them from. And that makes a lot of sense to me if you're trying to keep logistic tail. That means feeding and carrying of these guns to a minimum. And I'm all about that type of thing. But what I think is dramatically interesting, to me, is just because of what's been going on in the firearms community, that these are more popular. If you look at the trends in the firearms community, you see things happen over years. For a while, it was everything AR-15. Then it became everything AK, which I thought was interesting for me because we never get the limelight. AK guys don't. But then you started seeing quality suffer. But in the AR-15 world, you started seeing quality get better. You started seeing really what used to be considered marginal builders or manufacturers step up because they were selling so many of these items that their quality control was being called out consistently, so they started fixing it. That's great for the consumer. Now, you look at the AK again, just talking in circles about this stuff, so bear with me. The AK, what happened with them is people didn't have the data packet. Remember, this is a Russian or an Asian type device that they don't have access to the data packet because we were never communists, so we had to find it or make it. Enter like Palmetto State Armory, enter like Century Arms. They were trying to do something that usually the Russians or the Soviets, let's talk real here, the Soviets would find out you were anti-capitalist and they would just drop the data packet and all the tooling you needed to start building AKs. Well, these companies never had it, but they did have examples that they could work off of. And I think that's what Smith & Wesson did with the Kel-Tec Sub-2000, is they copied some of the work, but then they used some of their build technology that they have from their Smith & Wesson M&P Sport line to build this. They used a lot of ergonomic cues from both the M&P and the AR-15, which is America's rifle, to make this cooler They threaded the barrel so that you could put a suppressor on it or put your own muzzle device on it. There's a lot of cool things that the FPC has. My big concern has always been with the pivot piece of the folding guns, especially when they're polymer. Now, I'm a big fan of polymer, but I know one of the big issues with polymer is where you fold something or where the stress is on a design. That is where you're usually going to want to reinforce it multiple times because it actually grinds away and wears, but it also can handle stress in one direction usually and not multiples at a time. And that's where you usually see polymer fail, even though polymer's advanced tenfold in the last 10 years. It makes a lot of sense to keep the rifle down, the weight down of it. It also makes sense to keep the cost down. Now, the FPC is going to start, as I said, it looks like the street price is going to be $750. It'll come down. It's because it's brand new. Depends. I say that because if it gets too much, if there's too much demand on it, it'll stay high and it'll probably go higher. But we get back to how are you going to store this? How are you going to carry this? And that's why the folding guns come into play. Now, they make 1,000,000,001 different packs. But the question I have always with this type of design, even with my PCC type of thought process, is how would I transport this? Where would I keep it in my vehicles so that it isn't, a blaring sign that says I have this thing in case something bad did happen? But in the reality of the situation is we do things day to day. You go to work, you don't want some guy looking in the truck into the window of your vehicle and say, oh, there it is, smash the window because they think it's just a bag. So there's that. Then it comes to how much ammunition are you going to carry? Now, the FPC is cool because it allows 2 of those 20-round magazines to be stored into the butt stock of it. I'll give it props for that because that is something unique and different, kind of AR-7-ish. It allows you to carry ammunition on you that you're not carrying a ton of extra mags if you don't need it or you don't feel you're going to need it. The question I would have, it looked like Iraq Veteran 8888 had some problems with the ergonomics of that because they actually lock in with a mag release to the buttstock. So that means they're secure. You're going to have to get the manual of arms down just right so you can kick those mags out of the buttstock to reload your gun. That would be just a training thing. The question I have is, do you train with this? You have one of these pistol caliber carbines that transforms. Do you actually train with it? Because the reality is most of us that train with an AR-15. I've been training a lot with my AP-5 because I like the thing. And it makes a lot of sense that you would have to train with this type of thing if that's the scenario you're going to. Because there again, you don't want to have training hickeys where you're dropping a magazine and trying to figure out where your magazines are in your quote-unquote survival rig or your get-home rig. And that's what I would say about this. The other thing is that they're all charging the FPC and the Sub-2000. You don't have to charge them from the back where the bolt or the handle is. Both of these are blowback guns, so the mass of the bolt carrier is going to be heavier because that's the only thing that's keeping it shut and safe when it's fired. But the guns themselves are light. I have a friend who has a 40 Kel-Tec Sub-2000 and a 40. It's a very light, handy gun. I don't like the sights on it. That was one of my rubs against it. The FPC-9, or the FPC specifically, addresses this, how it folds so you can put an actual optic on it. But then you start wondering, did you keep the batteries in your optic live if you're just using a red dot? If you're using one of the micro dots or one of the etched reticle ones, that mitigates that some, but adds weight. So there's always a trade-off. There's no free lunch in any community, especially in the firearms community. So I'm very interested in seeing results from this. I have friends that are already asking me to tell them my thoughts on the FPC 9, and these are it. I really do think it's a neat, interesting design. I think it's ugly as sin. I'm not personally not interested in either of these anymore, but that's my own thing. You do you. Mostly because I'm saving up as much cash as I can in my capital so that I can use it for my business. After the business takes off, if it takes off as big as I hope it does, then I'll consider something like, some expansion things. The first gun I'm looking forward to adding to my collection, if it gets big enough, if my business gets big enough, is the G43 from Walther, the World War II battle rifle that the Germans had. This is something that's number one on my list that I have to have before I die, because someone in the family has to have one of these. My dad wanted one. I've spoke about the love affair of this particular gun. But this is on a secondary list that I have. That is, would I consider this, or would I like to add it to my collection? And as my business grows, and I can step away more to do other parts of other things, like testing and stuff like that, where I'm not having to be in a place where I'm not supposed to have a firearm, so I won't for now. I know how status that is, but the business I chose is one of those ones on the margins that for now, it's margin because it's one of those ones that it's a sin. Like brewing beer back in the day, or it used to be considered a sin. What I'm doing for manufacturing of cannabis products and stuff like that is considered a sin by a lot of people now. They don't understand that there really is no difference between the two. They've never experienced anything between cannabis and alcohol. Some of these people have never done either or, and that's fine. I'm going off of experience I've had from high school when I probably shouldn't have been messing with this stuff. Now that it's legal, in New Mexico anyway, I see no problems with trying to be the Sam Adams of the cannabis industry. That's why I'm relying a lot on testers to see where my potency and how great of a craftsman I am. Because testers won't lie to you. If it's really bad, and it's someone that you're picking that's not your best friend, who's afraid of hurting your feelings, they're usually pretty honest with you because they realize what you're trying to do, and they're trying to get a better product for themselves when they start purchasing. That is what I'm looking for. When it comes to the FPC or the PCC, I think it's a great training idea. I went with the PCC because I can train a lot cheaper, keeping one ammunition source and leaving my 5.56 ammo alone, which I replenished that too. That was a priority when I got paid out from the state for working 23 years for the state and getting your payout, which was a little disappointing, seeing how much taxation or how much theft the government pushed down on us. But it still gives me a very good starting point, and it leaves me a full year at least to focus on the business, focus on podcasts, and helping as many people in my spare moments as I can. Those are my goals right now. So just some minor thoughts on the FPC and on the coolness of the triple changer type guns. Let me know what you think. Give me a comment. Like, share, subscribe. You can email me at atin082 or atin at gmail.com if you have any questions or have any show ideas. Be great.